Hi, it's Phil here from Revive My Ride, and earlier this year I rebuilt this crash-damaged BMW M135i. And for a while it was all going great and I was loving the car, but then it all changed. So it all started with this BMW bonnet open warning light, which seemed to happen every time it started to rain outside. And it would keep going and going and going. And then to make matters even worse, I then started to get a sporadic BMW coolant level low warning, which was really annoying. And then at that point, the two warnings started to battle for supremacy. So the coolant level and then the bonnet open and then the coolant level again. So I've really got to try to get this fixed because it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to get started with the bonnet switch warning message because that's the really persistent one. And then we'll move on to the low coolant sensor. For a long time now, BMWs have had a double latch system. So one on the right hand side and then another one over here on the left. Now, just because you have two latches doesn't mean you have two bonnet sensors. Some cars will have two sensors, but some cars will actually only have one, and it will be on one side or the other, so you kind of have to check to see where it's located. Okay, so I did my research, and the sensor for the bonnet switch is in this right hand side one, at least on a UK spec M135i. So you just need to pop out each one of these 4 bolts. Now it should be possible just to lift this latch out with a bit of messing around. And actually it turned out not to be as simple as that. To be honest, I only want to look at the sensor switch. Yeah, so clearly this is going to take a bit more time to fix because there's quite a lot to disassemble to get that latch out. And it's trapped under this piece, which I'm calling the slam panel. Other people might have different names for it. And to be honest, as you can see, it's bolted down everywhere. So there's a lot of bolts in this. Clips onto the headlights. It looks like the front bumper support clips over it. So it's going to be a really big job just to look at this bonnet switch. What I'm hoping is that maybe I can just see underneath if I take some of this airbox out. Now at the far side over here, there's just a little Jubilee clip. That just needs to be loosened off. Okay, that should do that. Next up, I'm just going to pop this sensor off. Just a tab you squeeze. Oh, there we go, yep. And then the airbox has got 4 clips. So it's got 2 here, 1 at the back, and another one just under here. So I should be able to just lift that off now. It just pops out of this. You just kind of wiggle it and drag it off of there. And then this is the Jubilee I've loosened here, so that'll come off. I don't know if you have to buy an entire new latch in order to get a new switch that works in it. But I've heard that there's a temporary fix you can do just to save your sanity a little bit. And so I'm going to investigate that now. Now that we've got the airbox lid off, we can have a look down the back. So as you can see, I have a bit of a view underneath now to the back of the latch, and this is where the cable comes in that operates the latch. But I can't see any wires or a switch or anything going in there, which is weird because I'm told this is where it is. What I've discovered is that between the back of the bonnet latch and the airbox, can you see this plug that's down here? And this is the wire that goes to the bonnet latch. And mine's broken and dangling. And I think what's been happening is the broken switch has just been tucked down the back, and then when you drive through water on rainy days, then water gets onto the switch and it makes the contacts connect. So there were just 2 wires dangling down the back, so I've stripped the insulation off them ready for my temporary fix. And I'll be honest, you know, a broken switch and dangling wires weren't what I thought was going to be my problem. So what I've got here is a 20 kilo ohm resistor. Now if you just join these 2 wires together here, then it doesn't fool the system because it knows there's still a problem. But if you put the resistor between the 2 wires, then that tells the system everything's okay. So here I'm just crimping the resistor in place using a couple of straight crimp, and then I've got some heat shrink which I'm using to hopefully waterproof it a little bit more. And then I'm just going to finish off with some tape just to tidy it all up a little bit. Okay, with that done, we're moving on to the coolant tank, which is the low coolant level warning. Well, for starters, we know the coolant bottle's not empty because you can see how blue it is down there, and you can see the level just there. But just looking by eye, I can see the minimum level there. And so what I'll do is I'll just put a mark of pen on so that then it stands out for you guys too. So you can see that the coolant level is above the minimum at the moment. Now if this bottle was completely empty, then I'd be thinking there's a leak. It'll probably come as no surprise to you that I'm now suspecting the coolant low level sensor, which is on the bottom of this bottle. So what I'm going to do is undo it, lift it up so that I can inspect and see what's going on underneath it. So I just need to remove the pipe that's on the top right. It's another one of those where you lift a little wire clip and then you just pop it off. Okay, so the only thing holding this BMW coolant bottle down is one 8mm bolt at this top corner. Now I'm just going to lift the coolant tank up, but I'm just mindful that there's the sensor underneath and also there's another hose connection under there, so it'll only come up so far. And also it just hooks on at the front here, so I'm just going to gently pull that up. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can just see the sensor down there, and that actually just pulls out of the bottom, and that's what we think the problem is on this car. So I'm going to pull that out of the bottom and just inspect to see if I can see anything wrong with it. Can you see how smashed all of this is? Well, obviously it shouldn't be like this, but you can see somebody's glued this into the bottom of the bottle. And so probably this has come loose at some point, and that's why I'm getting my coolant sensor problem. And it looks like the sensor itself is probably an integral part of the reservoir. So in order to replace the sensor in there, you probably have to replace the whole coolant bottle. I also have to get a new connection for mine, which I'll probably have to solder on. So I decided I needed a replacement coolant tank for my BMW, primarily because the bracket was broken how it mounts onto the car, but also because I had a problem with the plug that goes onto the level sensor. This is a replacement one that I found. I found it using real OEM. If you haven't used it before, it's a BMW parts catalogue online and it's absolutely brilliant. And that allowed me to find the parts number for this expansion tank. And once I had the part number, I was also able to use real OEM to find out what models this expansion tank was fitted to. So what that means is pretty much any 1, 2, 3 or 4 series car from about 2010 to 2019 will have the expansion tank that I need. This gives me more to search through on eBay to get the best possible price. And so I was able to get this replacement coolant tank for about £15.90 delivered. Now I know that a lot of people will be saying, why didn't I just buy a new one? Well, this one's in pretty good condition, you know, it's cleaned up really nice. But also this part is about 140 quid for BMW. And also the coolant level sensor is integrated into the bottom of it. So even if your problem is just the sensor, you have to replace the whole unit. Whoops. As you can see, there's still a bit of fluid left in it. Let's go ahead and get this fitted before it leaks all over the floor any more than it has already. Yeah, so I don't have any replacement blue coolant, so I'm a bit underprepared. But what I do have is a little hand pump and a clean bucket. So I'm going to suck this out and then use it again when I put my new tank in. I refitted this little hose, so I'm just taking it back off again. These can be a little bit brittle, so be careful what you do with it. The temptation is to bend it out of the way, but they can break quite easily. I think I'll just gently put it there for now. Just using a trim tool here to pull the wire back and then lever the hose off at the bottom. These can get a bit tight over time. That's why you can see I'm using this trim tool to try and gently lever it off. Of course, we don't want to break this. This is my broken sensor plug, and that's why when I bought a used replacement coolant tank, I made sure that it came with a sensor plug on it, because I could just solder that in now. Anyway, we'll put this off to one side, and I pulled this wire off a minute ago, so I'm just going to put that back in. I'm just holding this pipe high so I don't lose too much fluid, because like I mentioned, I didn't buy any replacement fluid. Okay, so we're ready to put this onto our replacement tank, and it's really important you make sure that this hose at the bottom is clipped in really well to your new tank, because otherwise it can blow off and you'll lose all your coolant. So as you can see, I pushed it fully home on the bottom, and you may have to twist it left and right a little bit to make sure it goes fully home. And then I just pushed the clip back in and it snapped in place, so that sounds good. But just as a bit of a test, I'll just get this lever behind it. You see it popped straight back off. So that would have been a disaster. So that's why it's important that you do that extra test. So I'm just going to try again now. Oh, there we go. Okay. So as you can see, it wasn't pushed fully home before, but it is now. But I'm just going to repeat the little test I did a minute ago, just to make sure this hose can't just fall off again. And as you can see, it's got it, so I'm confident with that. Okay, so we're ready to refit the new tank. And the important thing here are these two squares. So this is where tabs that are on the tank just fit into. So you just need to make sure it slots into those. And then I just have this 8mm bolt to put back in this corner. So we just have this hose that goes to the top of the expansion tank here. And it might have come out of the little clip here, like mine has. So just make sure as you're putting it back in, then you're popping it back into that clip. Just there, just to tidy it up. And then it's just worth having a pull on that to make sure it stayed located properly. Because again, you would lose a lot of coolant if that just blew off. Now I'm going to cut off the old broken plug and solder on a new one. So I'm just going to snip these off nice and short. I'm just going to peel this back just a little bit further, just like that. And now I just have some simple wire strippers. And I'm just going to strip some of this wire back, some of this insulation back. There we go, so that's one of them. Okay, and I'm just going to prepare the wires on the plug exactly the same. And because the plug came off the exact same car, then you just have to match the colours to make sure they're going to the right place. As you can see, I've got my soldering iron heating up here. It should be nice and hot by now. Next, I'm just going to drop a little bit of shrink sleeve over both of these, and this will cover the soldered joint once we're done. There you go, so that's one of them. Just pop this out of the crocodile for a minute. And now I'm just going to do what's called tinning the wires. So it just means getting a bit of solder applied to each one of these, and then they're ready to go. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same for the wires on the end of the plug. And I've got little blobs of solder on there. All I'm going to do now is heat it up again. Okay, so I'm going to heat up the little blob and solder that onto there. Now I'm going to get this up away from the bodywork, away from plastic things a little bit, because now we want to do the heat shrinking. So I'm just going to pull those sleeves over into place. And there we go, looking good, huh? Now I've just got my hot air gun. I just need to tidy this back up again. So I peeled that back a little bit. So I'm going to put it back where it was, just like that. I'm just going to just tape this up again. If I had some narrower tape, I'd be using that, but I've only got this fat stuff, so it'll have to do. Now all we have to do is plug the sensor back in again and job's a good one. There we go, you hear it click in. Okay, we're ready to fill it back up again, so I'm going to get the cap off. And then I'm not a complete cowboy. Yes, I'm reusing my coolant again, but here I've got a little 260 micron filter. So I'm just going to pop that on. In fact, what I'm going to do is pop this little funnel on, and then the filter in the funnel. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the cap back on. And you notice how it has these arrows? Well, that's how you know when it's done. There we go, it kind of clicks into place, so you feel it and then the arrows line up. So let's have a little look at the level. It's not looking too bad, but we need to start the car up and run it up before we can check it again. So I gave the car a bit of a start just to prime the system, and it greedily sucked down the coolant. So now the level's down near the minimum, or maybe just below it. So it looks like I might have to do a top up anyway. So let's get stuck into that then, huh? So I'm going to do a little top up because ideally I'd like that level to be up near the maximum. Being a 2015 car, this BMW should have G48 coolant in it. But the key term here is should. So I know for a fact from working on this car that it's had a new radiator in it at some point. And that means I can't guarantee that the car still has the G48 in it that it would have had from new. And it's really important when you're topping up that you know which one should be in the car and is in the car, so you can top up with the right one. Because a lot of these coolants don't like to be mixed together, and in extreme cases they can cause a sludge, which can then lead to engine damage, so it is important to get it right. So I'm left with two options really. The first is I could just drop all of the coolant out of this system and renew it, and that way I know I've got it right. But that seems a bit extreme just for a top up, right? Well, don't worry, because there's a second and much better option, which is to use Prestone. And as you can see, Prestone has been developed to work with all makes and all models. which means it can be used to top up no matter what kind of coolant your car should or does have in it. So I'm just mixing up my Prestone at a 1:2 ratio, and then we can go ahead and go top up. Okay, so it might have seemed like a lot of effort for what is just a small top up, but it's worth getting right. So now we're ready to top up our BMW coolant tank. Now that's looking better now up at the maximum level. So it's nice to have that done, but I'm afraid now it's back to the bonnet latch again. So I did run the car for a while with the resistor in place, but in the end my OCD got the better of me. So I bought a new bonnet latch, well, a second-hand bonnet latch, and I made sure that the integrated sensor was in place, which you can see there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that fitted. So I don't have any instructions, so I'm going to work it out as I go along. So I'm just going to quickly pop this out, same as I did earlier, so I'm not going to show it all. Okay, there we go. So first up, I'm just going to undo this little bracket. It connects this big piece of the slam panel to the headlight. And there's just another one just like it on the far side. Next I'm going to undo the two large bolts at each side. You can either use a socket or a T40. And then the same again at the other side. So on this side, the latch that I'm replacing, these two hold the latch in place. But these two hold this slam panel down, and we're going to need to lift that to get the latch out from underneath. So I'm going to undo all four of these. You can see that sprung up a little bit then, so that means we're getting somewhere. And on the left hand side, even though we're not removing the latch, I'm going to undo all four as well, just to make sure I'm able to lift up this slam panel. Now just under this edge here we have four smaller bolts and then two large ones in the middle that go to the V-brace. So I'm going to start with the four smaller ones. And now just moving on to the two bigger bolts. So the only last thing I'm going to do before lifting this out is this is the cable that comes to this latch, and it's just in a couple of holders, so I'm just going to pop it loose so that there's plenty of play and wiggle room there. So I should be able to lift this slam panel off now. It's just tucked under the front of the bumper on the inside. There's a couple of little tabs, but if you tip it forward like this you can get it out from under it. There we go. As you can see now we have access to our latch. So I'm going to lift this latch out and just feed the cable out with it at the same time. So we just need to transfer this cable to the new latch. And so all you have to do is get behind here and just lever that way. And now just pull this cable out of its attachment. There we go, like that. And then down in that hole there's a little ball. And you just pop it out like that. So I'm just going to move my old latch out of the way. Put my new one in a similar sort of position, and I'm just going to pop that in the bracket there, and then just lever this one forward until the ball drops into place, just like that. Now I'm only guessing because remember my switch was missing entirely, but I'm pretty sure that this little clip here just goes into the edge of this bracket here, keeps the wire nice and tidy. So now that we've got that done and the cable on, we can drop both of these down. Now that we've got that cable in place, we can just pop it back into the clips that hold it nice and tidy there. So on the back of your connector for your sensor switch, you can see that it's slotted there. And I'll show you in a minute, but on the back there, it looks like that just feeds in place. So it should be possible to slide this out from under here, and then we can lift it up to work on it. So let's have a look. So it looks like if we get a screwdriver down there like this and then push it to the left. Anyway, if you're careful and a little bit lucky, then you won't damage that part. But bearing in mind it's actually the part that's attached to your new switch that's the important one. Once you get it in this position, this is the plug that goes to the car. You just need to squeeze that and slide it out. So I'm just connecting the old plug with the resistor on it, and then I'm just plugging in my new one. Okay, that's good. Sorry the access is so poor it's impossible to film, but here I'm just reaching behind and then I'm sliding that plug holder onto the little bracket. So I'm just going to drop this slam panel into place, remembering that it has to clip under the front bumper at the front. And the first thing I'm going to do is put the 4 screws in that hold the latch in place. because if I can't get these lined up for any reason, then I might have to lift the slam panel again, so I don't want the slam panel bolted down at this point. So that's those 4 bolts done, so I'm just going to move to the left hand side and do the same. This one's moved position a little bit, so I just need to get it lined up where I want it. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these big bolts in at the back. You probably noticed I put all these in by hand when I'm tightening, and it's just because that's how I prefer to do things rather than driving them in with the driver, because I can feel what's going on and how tight they are this way. And with these being the bigger, more structural bolts, I'm just going to use a 13mm socket just to snug them up nice and tight. Okay, might as well get the other ones done on the other side. Just need to get these in under this edge here. Now just these big bolts that go onto the V-brace, and then finally these little black screws that go onto the headlight bracket, and just on the far side too. Great. So I just need to put the top of the air box back in, so I'm going to start by feeding this part into the hose with the Jubilee clip on it. There we go, that's good. And then, to be honest, the top of the air box just drops in place, okay, just like that. We'll just need to pop the clips in place that hold the lid on. And then the Jubilee clip on the air intake. And finally, not forgetting the little wire here. So just a final thing to say quickly, because it's starting to rain, is you want to test that your new latch works properly before you shut your bonnet or hood of your car. Because if you shut it and it fails to unlatch, you won't be able to get it open again, and that'll cause you big problems. So here's how to do it. Use a screwdriver and push down here and you'll hear it click. And then continue pushing it and you'll hear it click again. Now this is effectively the position it'll be in when the bonnet's down. Now all you have to do is pull the bonnet release handle. Remember, it's twice on a BMW and it should pop back up. And we're done. Okay, so that was a little update on what's happening on the M135 F20. I'm hoping that both of those warning messages are gone now and I can just have some nice, blissful, peaceful driving. I still have some other videos coming up on this car because I've got lowering springs for it, and also there's a slight oil leak on the rocker cover gasket, so I'm going to have to tackle that. So those videos will be coming up soon, but also I'm going to be back on my F40, my 2022 M135i with the water flood seized engine. I've almost got to the position where that engine's ready to come out, and then I can investigate it and see what's happened to it. So hopefully that works out interesting to you. So if you're not already a subscriber, then please consider subscribing, and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.